1 in 4 men in the UK suffer from low testosterone, often without knowing it. Symptoms like low energy, poor sleep, and a lack of focus can take a serious toll, but they don't have to. That's why we're partnering with Manual to urge you to take an easy at-home testosterone test to check your health. Join 30,000 men already benefiting from the testosterone replacement service, with 86% reporting improved energy and quality of life in just 3 months. I'll be taking one of those tests next week, so I'll let you know how that goes. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. England's brave new era of white ball cricket has not started well. They were thumped in Brendan McCullum's first game in charge, as coached by a dauntingly impressive India side that seamlessly regenerated from the version that won the T20 World Cup last year. We'll also talk about Rocky Flintoff, who scored his first professional 100 for the England Lions Down Under, and Mel Farrell joins us again, this time interviewing Will Smeed about his decision to turn his back on first-class cricket at the age of 21. I'm Rana, and with me today is Phil Walker. Mark Butcher will be joining us later in the show. First things first, Phil, we've been a bit under the weather in Wisden Towers this week, so apologies in advance for any background coughs and sneezes. And yeah, I didn't mention it in the intro, but what I will almost guarantee to be the most entertaining part of today's podcast will be Phil's complete rebuttal to accusations of English bias in the Australian media in response to the WCM Test Team of the Year.
Guilty as charged.
Well, let's start with the T20 that took place yesterday. England were utterly annihilated in the first T20I in India. Josh Buttler hit a defiant 68 off 44, but even with that score, England could only get up to 132. Varun Chakravarti, in particular, causing chaos with his mystery spin. He looked so good. Phil, does the job on McCullum's hands, is it potentially bigger than people might have realised, in that you might have less room for tactical change in limited overs cricket compared to Test cricket, where you have a much broader canvas to change things on?
Well, it's certainly a big job, undoubtedly, and it needs to kind of find a new identity, really. I was quite impressed by the team that they picked. It was a very kind of front foot looking bowling attack, but then it also kind of plays into India's hands. You know, that bowling attack would be very useful in certain parts of the world, but perhaps less so in India. It is a challenge to work out the composition of this team. It looks like they've moved away from Sam Curran and one or two others, and they're putting a lot of truck by what remains still quite a raw middle order in Liam Livingstone and Jacob Bethell there at 5 and 6. Yeah, it's a team that is necessarily in transition, I suppose, and there's a number of question marks against any number of their players, really. You know, Phil Salt remains an unproven opening bat. Ben Duckett has been brought in now. It looks like across the formats to be an all three format opening bat, but again, he'll have to prove himself at 50 over cricket and T20 cricket. He has a good domestic record, but he's just getting going again. But Buttler is so key to everything, though, and his face always betrays him. And he's looked down in the dumps, and he's looked kind of listless in recent months. If McCullum can take the defibrillators to Buttler and convince him that he's still in charge of a potentially lethal cricket team, which no doubt has match-winning potential, then you can see that this relationship can work. I think there's a number of reasons to be cheerful, notwithstanding what happened yesterday, but there remains certain fundamental issues that English cricket has been bedeviled by forever. You know, how our batters play spin on turning tracks. You see it in whites, you see it in pajamas, you see it across an afternoon, and you see it across a day, and you see it across a week, you see it across a series. That remains problematic. You know, look, Liam Livingstone's a very dangerous player, but that shot he played in the same over that Brook had got out slightly unluckily, the shot he played against Varun was a horror show. There remains those fundamental challenges. Not only do we struggle to play spin, in spinning conditions, but we struggle to produce spinners to utilise them, with obviously the grand exception of the great Adil Rashid.
Just on Butler's demeanour, it's something that he's working on. So before the first T20 on Wednesday, speaking to the press, he said, "I'm in a good place. I've been practicing my smile in front of the mirror," which is, I suppose, positive news.
There's no flies on that kid. You know, he reads a lot. He's smart. He knows how he comes across, I think, and he will also know the scale of the job in hand. I think we spoke about this after the last World Tournament, and we said it lands on him. Does he have the energy? Does he have the motivation to go round again? And I think he does. And I think giving McCullum the keys to the whole show cannot have done anything but have a positive effect on him. If I'm slightly garbled, by the way, I'm watching Danny Wyatt-Hodge make a fist of England's chase against Australia women, and you know they'll probably contrive to balls it up somehow. But it's currently an on game, 1 for 92, as they say. Anyway, yeah.
Sorry, can I just say that it was really interesting as the game was unfolding. So we have a team out in India. So when you're watching England-India games, it's quite interesting because you get the perspective from an Indian journalist live as you're watching the game. And initially, a few of my colleagues out in India were saying, "Oh, this is an interesting pitch. We've not seen many pitches in Kolkata turn like this in recent years." And the members of the UK team were just going, "Hang on. Just because England can't face spin does not mean it's a Bunsen, and does not mean that Adil Rashid's going to take 4 for nothing." And it was interesting on a number of levels. First of all, in terms of the team composition, India play 3 frontline spinners. England only picked Adil Rashid, and this is a pattern that's gone back quite a long way now, that England haven't trusted a second frontline spinner alongside Adil Rashid for a really long time now. And then with the batting, you can look at their batting lineup in 2 ways, depending with which eye you're squinting. You can, with one, if you squint your right eye, you're like, oh, that's a really powerful lower middle order. And then if you squint your left eye, you're like, my word.
Jamie Overton at 7.
You get Jamie Overton at 7, Liam Livingstone, who's hit and miss at 5. You know, you compare Livingstone to the best players in the world in that position. Jacob Bethel, we love Jacob Bethel on this podcast, but he's barely played any cricket in Asia. I think he's went on 1 England Lions tour to Sri Lanka a couple of years ago, and that's it. So to expect him to succeed from minute 1, I think is really optimistic. Even Harry Brook, right? That's probably the one question mark over his game at the moment, is him against high quality spin. We know he can do it in slow conditions in Pakistan, but he's not done it against really high quality spinners in conditions that have even offered some assistance to the spinners. So this could be quite an ugly series for England.
Yeah, well, aren't they always when England play limited overs cricket in India? You know, it tends to go that way. I mean, I'm old enough to remember England drawing a series 3-3, an ODI series, with Flintoff doing the Ganguly and waving his shirt above his head. But generally, England go out there and get marmalised. And you put it down to a kind of reconnaissance mission, you know, giving players exposure to these alien conditions. Just on Brook, he looked a bit skittish. He was slightly unlucky the way he got out. Inside edged it onto his pad and it trickled back and hit the stumps. But he could have been bowled a couple of times. He obviously smashed one beautiful 6 down the ground, but he didn't look entirely at ease. It's quite a big couple of months for him, really. Well, 3 or 4 months for him, going into the IPL again, having flickered in that first year, but generally not delivered. He made 1 brilliant 100 and not much else around it. He is now, well, he's in the top bracket in Test cricket. You know, literally, he's 2nd or 3rd in the world, and now he needs to bring his one-day numbers up alongside them. He showed in September, in English conditions, albeit against Australia, that he has the game to be a top-class 50-over cricketer. And he no doubt has the shots to be a top-class 20-over cricketer. But as he says himself, he needs to try and find the right tempo and balance. The hoary old cliches, it's a bit longer than you think. You don't have to try and whack it out the ground every single time. The frustration yesterday is that Butler was going so nicely, and when Brook went, Livingstone batted like it was the last 5 overs. And he seems like he's always batting like it's the last 5 overs. Now, sometimes it will come off earlier in the piece and he'll finish up with a 90-odd. And obviously, he did well in the latter part of the English summer. But overall, he is a depth player. He's a player for the slog overs, and he's often very effective at that. But it's a big ask to have him in there at number 5, in the fulcrum position of your team. It's a big ask. But then look, if you run through that team, Salt, Duckett, Butler, Brook, Livingston, Bethel, you're not picking too many other players in that top 6, are you? Really? You might change the order around a little bit, perhaps, but you are probably looking at that as your best top 6, and it has limitations, but it's also immensely dangerous.
Let me throw a name at you. Joe Root's playing more T20 cricket. The next T20 World Cup's in India and Sri Lanka.
Well, you know my feelings on this.
England have problems against spin. If you look back to the T20 World Cup, the game they lost against India, Guyana, if you look back at their 2 most recent tours of the Caribbean, they've struggled against Akhil Hussain and Gudakesh Moti. In this game, they're 67 for 5 from 12 overs against spin. If they're looking for someone who's good against spin, who's actually done really well in a T20 World Cup in the subcontinent, he's playing T20 cricket again. I know he's not in the mould of a 2020s T20 player, and the game's moved on a lot since 2016, but there's got to be logic behind Root coming back specifically for that tournament. I'm not saying more generally in T20 cricket, but specifically for a World Cup in the subcontinent.
Look, as I say, you know my feelings on this. I would have liked Joe Root to have played a lot more T20 cricket, but if he had to sacrifice that in order to protect his Test match career, then so be it. But there is a very useful old world T20 batsman in there. I have no doubt about that. There were echoes of it all the way back in 2016. Everyone remembers that 80-odd off 50-odd balls against South Africa when he played angry cricket. But yeah, look, as you see in world tournaments, that your average median score comes down as the pressure is ramped up. And obviously, a general rule of thumb is that your bowling attacks are going to be a bit stronger in international cricket, right? And so you need players that can fall back on technical brilliance and ride storms and play quiet and deal with top-class spin from the off. And obviously England's best player in history is playing currently in South Africa. So yeah, look, there is massively a case to be made for a horses for courses selection. And he would be really up for it. I just wonder if the England selectors would dare go there, because there's quite a big year or so coming up in Test match cricket, and they wouldn't want to jeopardise anything. They want to protect Joe Root, understandably so. But there is a case to be made, just as there would be a case to be made, say, for James Vince, who's been confusingly overlooked, I think, over the years, especially in white ball cricket. A player who can bat through the innings, a player who you can hang an innings on. Butler is in there at 3 now, and I wonder if that's going to be his new role, to essentially kind of bat through, be there at the end, and then try and utilise those final few overs rather than going hard right up top. But we shall see. It's an interesting time. I think they will pick a win or two from the wreckage for sure over the next couple of weeks.
And also, if you're looking for positive signs, how good is it to see Jofra Archer and Mark Wood bowling fast together in the same side? It's a sight that we've not seen enough of in recent years. And yeah, Gus Atkinson had a tough day yesterday. Two off 13 with the bat, and then 0 for 38 off 2. He's someone who didn't play a lot of white ball cricket in the last year of the previous regime. He's clearly rated by McCullum in the Test setup, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes across this tour.
Yeah, so just on that, the result is almost immaterial. To see Wood bowling, I think he bowled 153 clicks, and Jofra bowling in the classical Jofra vein, that's England's win, right? If anything, you can kind of discard the result itself, and you can park the questions regarding their top 6, because you've seen there, with Atkinson in there as well, you've seen England's pace attack, their dream pace attack, and it might not get on the park very regularly across this calendar year, but if it gets on the park a few times, then England are going to be in with a chance in any format, anywhere.
You mentioned sort of the readiness players need to have to face the very, very top tier of bowlers that you come across in global tournaments that you don't always come across in bilateral series. These Indian batters who are the next generation, right? Because they won the T20 World Cup in 2024, and then immediately Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, and Ravindra Jadeja retire from the format. The next generation that have come through, all of these guys are total IPL superstars. They're guys who lead the line for their franchises. They are so ready for this level of cricket because if you're nowadays, if you're a properly top level IPL player, you're going to be a top level international player, and there is no step up for these guys. There's no step up for them, and they look ominously good.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the IPL, that it has the prestige of an important ODI and an important T20I. I love watching that opening pair. I've always had a real soft spot for Sanju Samson, and it seemed like he's been overlooked for Indian teams more than is fair over the years. I absolutely love his technique, and it's more pronounced now. This kind of big back and across step, and then he floats his front foot. And so it's almost airborne when he launches into the shot. And so it gives him incredible kind of weight transference into the shot. He's a natural hitter as well, stays leg side of it. He's as clean a hitter as there is in the world game. And I'm really pleased to see him up there now. And then there's Abhishek Sharma, who again is just a magnificent player to watch. There are echoes of Yuvraj in the backlift. The backlift comes, but even more pronounced with Abhishek. It comes out towards point rather than out towards gully. And so I'm not sure exactly what he'd be like, say, in seaming conditions, against red balls. It might be a bit loose there, but who cares about that nonsense? Because that arc, that backlift and arc enables him to play all round, and he can clobber you square either side over the ropes almost at will. How many sixes did he hit yesterday? 7 or 8, I think.
8 in 34 balls.
34. Yeah. So yeah, just a glorious cricket team, really. Hardik Pandya now in his spectacles, as the elder statesman of the team. But as you say, it's a new look all stars. It's like the IPL Globetrotters, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, and they are going to be favourites for that World Cup next year by such a long way.
Just a word on Bishnoi as well, the kind of the leggy again in a long line of fabulous little sort of pocket-sized Indian leg spinners, and bowls it quick. And there's something else as well. He's a very kind of charismatic-looking bloke, isn't he? He's a cool-looking dude, and again, spin bowling is as sexy as it gets in Indian cricket, and they just keep coming one after the other, and after him there'll be some more, and then there'll be some more after that.
Can I make a prediction for something a future England director of cricket will say at a press conference within the next 10 years? They will say, after England crash out of a T20 World Cup, something along the lines of, we need to find our own Varun Chakravarti.
Yeah, right. Good luck with that.
I think with the way T20 cricket is going, I think, quietly, English cricket isn't producing that many, certainly international class wrist spinners. And those guys are so important in T20 cricket. You've got basically the 17-year age gap between Adil Rashid and Rehan Ahmed. There's no one that they fancy in the middle of that. And Varun Chakravarti is a proper mystery spinner, does a bit of everything. And he's got an Ashwin-like quality in terms of how he studies the game. He was talking about how because he sort of burst onto the scene, came from nowhere, got into India's T20 World Cup squad a few years ago, then disappeared, and now he's back. And he said that previously he could spin it miles, but he learned that wasn't enough against the best players. So he's developed different types of spin. So overspin being the main one. And basically he's come back a little bit like Kuldeep did, actually. He's come back as a more well-rounded bowler, and he looks quite something. The way he bowled in that little period yesterday, when he got Brook and got Livingston in quick succession and very nearly got another one as well. I thought he was really, really impressive. Anyway, next up, Mark Butcher on the personnel selected for the start of the white ball Bazball era, and also on Pakistan beating West Indies, where once again their spinners dominated a home test. So we're having this conversation just before the first T20I takes place. So we're not going to get into too much detail on individual calls. So I guess we're looking at the overall themes of the 11 that England picked and announced a day out before the first game. But just the first game in a new era, a potentially really exciting new era, given what McCullum's done with the test side. What stands out for you in the 11 named and the squad more generally?
Well, I mean, as far as the sort of the bowling lineup is concerned, they've gone with Atkinson's in, Overton, who they sort of experimented with a little bit as a bowling all rounder, even though he wasn't fully fit on the recent West Indies tour. They like his the option that he gives them as a power hitter, coming in at number 8. Obviously, Atkinson can play a bit too. Archer's in and Wood, so it's very pace dominant, but they still have the option of the likes of Livingston and Bethel, and of course Adil Rashid. So I mean, it's a pretty well balanced attack for most conditions, and of course Ben Duckett at the top of the order replaces, well, it'd be Will Jacks, wouldn't it? Because he played in that West Indies series, but without a massive amount of success. And so that even though it's a new call, it doesn't come as much of a surprise. I think once he was named in the squad, it was pretty likely, given what he's done at the top of the order in Test matches, that McCullum would back him, and of course that means that Josh Buttler bats at 3, and is unlikely to keep wicket as well, which I think is something that McCullum is very keen on. That he captains the side from sort of closer to the bowlers, and also has slightly less on his plate. He's so important to England as a batter that anything that takes any energy away from him being at his absolute best with bat in hand is something that diminishes the side. So that's pretty much it. Brooke obviously back after a bit of a sabbatical, and then you've got Livingston, Bethel, the most mercurial rise of all time. So it looks like a pretty strong squad. I mean, I think McCullum has laid his cards on the table pretty firmly here in terms of the sort of players that, the sort of dynamic that he's going to want going forward.
On Duckett, it's quite interesting that now McCullum is the cross format head coach. Duckett is one of only 2 guys in the top 7 here who you'd say is nailed on to be in the top 7 for their first Test match of the summer. It's a quite extraordinary rise quietly from Ben Duckett. 3 years ago, Duckett wasn't on the scene in any format, and now he's one of the few guys he's on the scene in all formats.
Yeah. I mean, and it just shows you how fabulously he's played. Really, I mean, he's always had extreme talent, but that seems to have kicked up maybe 2 gears. And I thought that he should have found a spot in the last World Cup, actually, when England was sort of struggling for left-handers for a start, but also had sort of 5 guys in the batting lineup who'd all prefer to bat at numbers 1 and 2. He seemed like the obvious choice, even though he's going to open. But he seemed like the obvious choice to go in and give them something a little bit different. Obviously, the sweeps and reverse sweeps and the way that he plays at slower bowlers would have been very handy for him. So I think it's an overdue elevation, if I'm honest.
And Buttler at 3, I know that he's done it before. He did it recently at the end of 2024, but this is a new era. This would have been a time to change things up. Why do you think they've agreed that 3 is the spot for the captain?
I don't know. I mean, we've had this conversation often about how much more difficult it is for players coming in at 4, 5, 6 in T20 cricket and in 50 over cricket for that matter. And Buttler at the very beginning of his career, before he sort of started to open the batting in the IPL and then for England in T20s, was a bona fide kind of finisher. Was somebody that had the ice in his veins to do that job. And hasn't now done it for a very long time. And I think what it is that England at McCullum and with the players at their disposal, they know that there are an enormous amount of players throughout English cricket, let alone in the the immediate sort of pecking order, who could all do a very fine job opening the batting. And I think it just gives Joss a little bit more time to actually react to the game, and potentially to be there for much longer, throughout the course of a 20-over innings, and I like it. I really like it. It also, the other thing about it is, and this is really, it was something that I found when I went from opening the batting in Test matches to batting at number 3. It just gives you a tiny bit more breathing space. I obviously wasn't captain of the Test team at the time, but I found that you had, things, you didn't have that sort of mad rush. And if you're captaining the team and you've got to kind of lay out or get some sort of plan going for how you might be going about either batting first or batting second, whatever it is, or reacting to something that's changed throughout the course of the day. It's really difficult to do that if you've got to quickly stick your pads on and run straight back out there again as an opening batter. It just gives you that tiny little bit more time to kind of settle yourself, get yourself into a place where the brain is focused upon the job in hand, i.e. the batting, but also gives you a little bit more time in the dressing room, around the place, hopefully, to kind of, to be able to set out what it is that you want from your team. So all round, I like it.
I wonder if it's also a reflection of how T20 cricket is changing at the moment. This series is taking place in India, where last year we saw absurd scores in the IPL on the regular. And I wonder if actually the role of an opener is almost more dispensable than it used to be, in that you'd less than before, do you want your opener to take some time to get into an innings, because the power play is so crucial for you to, if you're going to score 230, which wasn't the norm by the end of the IPL, but lots of teams were getting there, you need to go so hard in the power play. And Butler is so good, you don't want him to be batting anywhere near recklessly at the very top of an innings. I mean, one of the best openers in the IPL last year was Sunil Narine, who's a very different type of batter than Joss Butler.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I always felt it was a little bit of a waste that somebody as good as he is and as dangerous as he is and as smart as he is, could potentially be, sat back in the dressing room after the first couple of overs. And of course, that can still happen batting at 3, but it does give the guys going above him even more of a license. The lineup, as I mentioned before, is very, very deep, with Overton coming in at 8 and Archer at 9. It's a little bit of a throwback to sort of like the days of Owen Morgan, and knowing that you had so much batting to come that nobody needed to kind of take a look, if you like. And I think Joss, because Joss is such a fantastic player, I think you're better off affording him the time to do that, and whereas you tell everybody else, go as hard as you want.
Quick question on Pakistan. They beat West Indies this week. It's their 3rd Test win in a row, having gone pretty much 3 full years without winning a home Test match. Once again, it was spin that did the trick. All 20 West Indies wickets fell to the spin trio of Abrar Ahmed, Sajid Khan and Norman Ali. They have found a formula that works, and they are going all in on it. Do you like it? It feels quite awkward given Pakistan's rich history of fast bowling. They've still got some really exciting fast bowlers who are not involved in home Test matches at the moment, given the way they're trying to win Test matches.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're not the first team to go down that road, are they? And to be honest, I think basically what it tells you is that perhaps their fast bowling stocks and stars aren't quite as good as perhaps we thought they were, and they thought they were. I know that Pakistan pitches can be incredibly bland, that make it very difficult for even the best fast bowlers to kind of to bowl teams out on a regular basis. So they're basically just trying to do what works, I guess. I suppose the difference between India doing something similar 4 or 5 years ago and deciding to sort of dominate their home Test match cricket with spin friendly tracks, and Pakistan is that Pakistan have had very little success at home playing the way that they were playing, if you see what I mean. And so they've had to find something that would suddenly get them on the board with wins. Whereas you could argue that India were capable of kind of doing it anywhere anyway, as was proved by 2 wins in Australia. So I mean, it didn't seem like it was quite as necessary for them to do it as perhaps it has been for Pakistan. Do I like it? I don't know. I quite like the idea of games pitches or whatever doing their natural thing over the course of 5 days. However, for the time being, I think that's what we're going to get in Pakistan.
Yeah, I think it's just fundamentally why is cricket a good sport? And I think diversity in conditions is a big part of it. And I would have absolutely no problem if it was one tester series was like this. But it's if, as it looks like it may go at the moment, every single test match from ball one, it's a Bunsen. That, as a viewing spectacle, I'm not sure is as exciting. And then from a playing point of view, as we saw with India, it affects your batters, right?
It eventually kills your batters. Yeah, absolutely. And the evidence is there for all to see with India. So yeah, you have to be very careful. But for the moment, it's working, and I would guess they'll run with it.
Anyway, cheers for your time, Butch. Catch you next week. Phil, the magazine made headlines across Australia this week. And this is so funny, I'm going to have to read the most of this article. This is on Fox Sports website.
Go on then. I hate all this. I hate this.
The headline is Bazball outrage as Cummins Aussies cop 2024 Team of the Year snub. Pat Cummins' men have completed cricket but have somehow inexplicably been wiped out in Wisden's Test Team of the Year. There has been anger and scoffing ever since the publication, viewed as the Bible of cricket, released its chosen Test 11 in its January edition. Cummins is the most stunning omission, with fans around the world wanting answers as to why the Australian captain was snubbed. To rub salt into Australia's wounds, the English publication found a way to squeeze 5 Poms into the elite team. It goes on to list out reasons why Australians might be selected, including referencing Alex Carey's credentials in a year in which he averaged 33 with the bat. And it quotes veteran commentator Jim Maxwell, who described Wisden as England cricket fanboys. They are Baz bullshitted, he posted, and then went into why he thought Cummins, etc., should be selected. Phil, do you want to give your official response?
What does Baz bullshitted mean? We've shitted ourselves? We've shitted Baz? I'm confused by that expression. Anyway, what do you want me to say here? What do you want me to say? All right, okay. In 2023, which you'll remember, there was an Ashes series, 2-2. Could have gone any way. Let's put it that way. And it's still raining in Old Trafford. In 2023, Australia had 4 names in the Wisden Test Team of the Year: Khawaja, Travis, Sir Patrick, and Mitchell Starc. England had 3: Stuart Broad, Joe Root, and Zach Crawley, who made it in. The year before, 2022, Australia had 4. And England had 3. Australia had Khawaja, Marnus, Patrick Cummins, and Nathan Lyon. So Australia across 2023 and 2024 are comfortably winning in this, evidently this game that serves only English myopia and bias. So if we are fanboys for English cricket's got to get some better ones, frankly, because we are hopelessly beholden to Australian cricket. Even during our best efforts to snub them. There is a broader point about this, I guess, that obviously the more you play, the more chance you have to make your mark. And so when we ask a panel of 40-something names to come up with their 11s, and they look at the results and they look at the numbers, and they see that someone like, say, Temba Bavuma has only played 5 test matches in 2024 for an average of 55. And then they look at someone like Joe Root, who's played, I think, 17 test matches for an identical average, but with 400s, and with 500s rather. And of those 500s, he's won more cricket matches by dint of having played more cricket matches. then it becomes hard to select Temba ahead of Joe, even though their averages are the same, but the sample size is so small. And it's not English cricket's fault, although perhaps indirectly it could be claimed to be, that the international game is so imbalanced and so skewed. And we have so few players, so few world-class players across the put-upon countries playing enough cricket to be considered alongside those who play a lot. Australia win out comfortably across the last few years for nominations. But England are always up there because they play so much cricket. They play a lot. Travis Head averaged 40 across 9 matches in 2024, which is, it's a few notches down from his career average, but nonetheless, can make a good case that he should have been in that side. And I picked him in my side, for example. But, this is democracy, right? If you ask a stupid question, you're going to get a stupid fucking answer. Travis was in my team. He'd be in my team even if he'd stunk the place out, and he didn't. He was a key man against India. He would have been in my 11, was in my 11, and ideally would have made the cut, and we wouldn't have to have these kind of ugly, pathetic conversations. As for Pat Cummins, he made the team in 2019, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So he's made it in four of the last 6. So I reckon he can live with a year off, probably. And while his numbers are excellent and his leadership is second to none, his numbers don't compare to the other 3 quicks that made the cut: Gus Atkinson, Matt Henry, and Jasprit Bumrah. Bumrah's been the player of the year. Gus Atkinson's the newcomer of the year, 11 tests for 52 wickets at 22. Cummins took 37 at 24. Now, you can make a case for sure. But when you add up as well that Atkinson made a test match 100, you can start to put the pieces together and realise that there's no skullduggery at play here. Just a bunch of goons trying their best to pick an 11 that reflects the landscape. The kicker is how few nominations across the last 6 years when we've been doing this thing, how few nominations come from Bangladesh, from West Indies, and to be honest, from South Africa as well. And it's the paucity of game time that these good players have, where our friends in Australia should be directing their anger and their disgruntlement, not us.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you called us goons who select the team. I actually take my selection very seriously, Phil. I agonise over this for many hours. And when I was selecting my team, that was one of the first things I noticed, that I think I actually did select one Australian in my team, and it was Carey, actually.
Yeah, and again, a case could be made for Carey ahead of Jamie Smith. There weren't that, because of Rishabh Pant's being sort of, struggling with his injury until he came back in the winter, there's not been an obvious keeper bat that's jumped out at us this year.
And when I was looking through it and I was working out why aren't there Aussies in my team, it was basically because no Australian had a good year throughout, or a really good year throughout. So Josh Hazlewood was absolutely brilliant first half of the year, and then in the biggest series of the year doesn't play a huge role. He misses the back half of it. Scott Boland has an amazing Border Gavaskar trophy, but he only plays in 3 of those test matches. One of those is actually in 2025, which isn't in our qualification period. Pat Cummins actually had a relatively quiet start to the year, even the first BGT test match. So he has 3 brilliant test matches at the end of the year. He doesn't have, by his standards, it's a relatively quiet year, his extremely lofty standards. Cam Green was their player of the first half of the year, but injury means he doesn't play the BGT. And then it's well known that Travis Head aside, none of their batters really had outstanding years. And even Travis Head, he was very low on runs heading into the Adelaide test match, or heading into the second innings of the first test match. So yeah, I suppose there are cases, but I think one thing that the article doesn't do is it doesn't point at people in the team that shouldn't have been in the team. Which I
do you know what it's like?
Telling.
Yes, it's like when United won the treble in 1999, and David Ginola for Spurs, because we won the League Cup, he won the Player of the Year, and any number of United players could have won it, but they spread it across. Beckham got a few votes, Giggs got a few votes, Keane got a few votes, and David Ginola ended up walking away with Player of the Year. Australia should be comfortable enough in their own skin, right? They have, as this article absolutely confirms, fact, completed cricket. So we can all rest easy here, I think, and move on.
Yeah, and I think actually it's a common thread in really good teams is that they have different match winners who bail them out. They're less reliant on individuals to carry them over. And Australia, if you look throughout the year, did have so many different match winners, and you can say the same about South Africa as well. Rabada and Maharaj would have had very good cases to get in the side, for example. But so many South Africans have contributed to their WTC final spot. Even someone like Corbin Bosch, who played one Test match, and he was basically the guy who won that Test match for South Africa. Dane Patterson took multiple fifers in their run to the final. They had lots of different match winners, which might mean that there wasn't one dominant guy who screamed that they should be in the final 11. Before we head to Mel's interview with Will Smeed, that is really interesting. Very interesting game that the England Lions are taking part in at the moment against a Cricket Australia 11. It's not a particularly strong Cricket Australia 11. Guys who are playing the Big Bash aren't involved, but a couple of headline performances of interest from England. So number one, Pat Brown took figures of 5 for 21, including a hat-trick of top order players. Obviously, Pat Brown played a few white ball internationals for England about 5 years ago now, but he's obviously impressed the selectors with his pace. I saw a bit of him bowl on the England Lions camp in South Africa just before Christmas, and he was bowling genuinely quite quickly. And it's a very exciting group of quicks that England have out there at the moment. Sam Cook impressing again. Josh Tongue is fit, which is a really good sign. John Turner, Pat Brown, and Mitchell Stanley, who I think is someone who is worth keeping an eye on, because he hit 90 plus miles per hour in his first season in professional cricket, and he's not played a lot of cricket since. And then the big headline news is that Rocky Flintoff, still age 16, hit 100. Batting,
it was
number 9.
It was number 9.
Yeah, his first professional 100. I think there were eyebrows raised when Flintoff was picked for this tour. It's amazing for a 16-year-old to be playing professional cricket in the first place, but he hadn't done anything particularly significant for Lancashire. But it's a real statement knock from Flintoff, and it shows that actually, even if you forget the surname, there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, for sure. They've got some interesting players in that squad, actually. Matty Hurst is in there. He's a player I like a lot. Another young Lancashire player. Got McCann and McKinney up top as well. Very good young players, Notts and Durham respectively. But the Flintoff innings has a bit of sparkle about it. I've seen some of the shots this morning, and I mean, it's uncanny. We've said this before, but it is uncanny. Considering that he's 2 minutes into his professional career, this is, as you say, this is an important moment for him, really. It's not a first-class game, so we've got to make that point, and got to be careful of getting too carried away. That they play Australia A, I think, next week in an unofficial Test match. Flintoff would have played his way into that side now, no doubt. It's a positive sign that they are identifying players of a certain kind of ilk as well. They're looking for players who bowl muscular pace. And crucially for me, as I said the other week, Sam Cook takes the new ball, and he nicked somebody off again in another brilliant new ball spell towards the end of this day. 6 overs, 1 for 7. And he's gone at an economy rate of around 2 across the 2 games that they've played so far. England need that kind of control just as much as they need pace and fire and all the rest of it.
It'll be really interesting to see how England go in those games against Australia A.
And that's next week, presumably, right? And it's just one game? I think it's just the one game, right?
Yeah, so it's just one game that starts next week. And yeah, really interesting. I mean, the Lions team has the feeling of more of an England academy team, with the exception of Sam Cook and Al Davies. There's a lot of really exciting talent in there. If you're looking for potential bolters for the Ashes next year, of guys who haven't really been involved yet, have a look at those bowlers, because those guys are almost, with the exception of Cook, all quick and big. Anyway, finishing off the show today is Mel Farrell's interview with Will Smeed. Will Smeed created a lot of headlines very early in his professional career. Initially, for his performances with the bat, he was one of the stars in the early seasons of the 100. And then he created more headlines for a decision he made off the pitch. In late 2022, at the age of 21, at that point, Smeed was an England prospect. He'd already played for England Lions. Smeed made the decision to effectively retire from first-class cricket before he'd made his first-class debut. It was a relatively controversial decision. It was a decision that had a lot of people fearing about what the direction of travel might be more generally for the best young players in the country. And I think this is a really fascinating interview because first of all, Smeed suggests that he might actually look to play first-class cricket in the near future for what would be the first time. But also, it really helps you understand the thought processes behind his initial decision, and the reasons why he made the decision might not be what you might have assumed in the first place.
Okay, so Will, here we are in Pretoria, South Africa. Can you tell me what the experience has been like for you at the SA20?
It's been amazing so far. I was super excited to find out that I was coming here, and looking forward to it all sort of pre-Christmas. And then I've loved it since I've been here. The group's been amazing. The cricket's awesome. The crowd's awesome. It's sort of lived up to everything I hoped it would be.
What is it about this tournament? Because there are a lot of English players who like to come out here, it seems. What are the specific things about it? You mentioned the crowd, but is there anything else about it as well?
I think obviously the cricket's a really high standard. It's great to play against sort of some of the best players in the world. Alongside that, it's in an amazing country. Especially this time of year, it's a nice change from the English weather back home and stuff like that. And the food here is amazing. And I mean, I just haven't heard anyone say a bad word about this comp really, and I can see why.
Who are some of the players you've enjoyed rubbing shoulders with at Pretoria Capitals?
Obviously, I knew Livy from before. To be fair, I know quite a lot of them from before. Livy, I've played with. Nish, I've spent a bit of time with. Riley was obviously at Somerset, and so was Miggy Pretorius. So I know those guys from before, and it's been great to catch up. And then it's been equally great to get to know everyone else in the group, and sort of make a few new friendships and get to know everyone a bit better.
Does each T20 tournament have its own specific feel or vibe?
Probably, in a few ways. But I think the thing that stood out here is just how welcome I felt and how much effort everyone seems to make to sort of form a really close group. I'd say we all get on really well, spend a lot of time together, and it's just been great fun, really.
I mean, this is a choice that you made a couple of years ago to concentrate on white ball cricket, sign that white ball only contract with Somerset as a result. So 2 years into that decision, how do you feel about that choice now?
I have no doubts that it was the right thing for me at that time. I think I wasn't enjoying the Red Bull side of things as much as I should have, and that was having an effect on everything in terms of my enjoyment of the game. But I think the injury last summer sort of threw a spanner in the works, where because of the timing of the injury, it meant I hardly played any cricket. And when you don't play, I think it really makes you want to play, which led to me obviously playing a few second team games that summer, and I actually really enjoyed them. And I think that's the first time I've enjoyed sort of the 4-day stuff in a long time, and speaking to people and chatting to people whose opinions sort of matter to me. I think I can see the benefits to my game of the Red Bull stuff. It's just making sure I'm in the right headspace to get everything out of that. And there's been a few conversations going on, so we'll see what the summer looks like. But I always said never say never to playing again. So, I mean, it's still up in the air at the moment, but we'll see what next summer looks like. So
there's definitely a possibility that you could actually still go for your first class debut.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed playing those games last summer. It was nice to just be able to bat without the stress of having to try and whack it straight away. And equally, watching the first team at Somerset last year, I think that's a team anyone involved with the club would love to be a part of. Some of those games they won, and I think we've got a really good chance of pushing for the championship. And I mean, that would be great to be a part of, because it would be the first one for the club. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going for it, I think, in terms of playing Red Bull stuff.
I mean, you talk about having time. I think your last innings, you scored a run of ball 93 and weren't out in that chase against the Warwickshire second 11. So does it feel that having had some good innings as well, how much of an effect might that have on your decision? Not just playing, but the fact that you were able to be aggressive and score runs.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a lot easier to enjoy it if you're doing well. And a lot of the work I've done over the last 2 years, even though I haven't been playing Red Bull cricket, has probably helped tighten up my game a bit technically, tactically, because obviously batting up top in white ball stuff, the ball still moves, so you still have to have those fundamentals. And yeah, I think I was just in a better mindset than I was when I played previously. And yeah, I mean, obviously you mentioned that innings where I went at a run of ball, but it still felt like I was batting properly. So
you mentioned fundamentals. Fundamentals is actually something I wanted to ask you about. Now, having sort of been through the past couple of years, do you think as a top order batter, when you're batting in the top order as well, because we have seen people in the lower order perhaps not play as much first class cricket, and their job is almost a bit simpler. But when you're in the top order, do you think those fundamentals that you can get from red ball cricket might be more important than perhaps you thought they were a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I guess there's probably more crossover batting up top. I wouldn't say I've realised they're more important. I sort of always knew that the fundamentals were important, and so I've still been training against the red ball because I know it moves and things like that, and it tests my technique more. So I think I've been working on that stuff anyway. It's more the time at the crease, just playing games of cricket and batting and facing bowlers and that side of stuff, which I feel like I've missed out on, as opposed to the technical stuff. Because I think you can get the technical stuff from training. It's that facing bowlers, the match practice that you don't get. And that's where last summer it felt like I hardly played any cricket. When
you actually made that decision a couple of years ago, you said that you'd spoken, quite to a lot of people before making that. Who were the types of people who you did talk to, and are you speaking to the same people again now as you perhaps look at which way you go next?
Yeah, I guess it was, from a cricket sense, it was like coaches, players who I'd played with and knew me quite well, but then equally it was my family and my friends and stuff, because it just, so I went from like the 100 final at Lords to a second team game in Northampton, and it's just a hard thing to get your head around that, and to get as up for the Red Bull stuff as you would for a final at Lords, which potentially led to me not enjoying it as much as I should have. And then I think I've always said I want to play cricket as long as I enjoy it. I think that's the fairest way for me to give everything to cricket and sort of be the best I can around that environment. And it felt like I was losing that a bit. And yeah, I think chatting to everyone, they knew that, and I knew as well, I'd get the best out of myself and sort of have the best effect on other people as well if I was enjoying it and happy to be there. And that was a big factor in the decision I made.
Have you enjoyed going around playing in the different T20 tournaments? There's a kind of gun fire, bearing in mind that last year was a bit different because of that injury.
Yeah, I've loved it. I think I basically just get to follow the sun around at the moment, which is nice. And you obviously meet some amazing people and work with some amazing coaches. And yeah, I've loved it. It's just the only thing that feels like it's been missing is that match practice, playing more games. And like I said, I think I feel in the best place now to enjoy playing those games and to give everything to trying to score as many runs as I can in Red Bull stuff and win games for Somerset.
Did you cop any flack when you made that decision?
I'm sure there was a lot of chat. I've never really been one to look at social media or listen to what anyone was saying. I think everyone that knew me knew that at that time that was 100% the right decision. The only opinions I think that I'd ever listened to are the people that I would have spoken to about it anyway. So yeah.
You obviously then talked about England aspirations. Has it been, do you think, an effective way, I guess, to increase those aspirations for England?
In terms of not playing Red Bull stuff?
Yeah.
I don't think it would have affected anything, really. I think you get picked for England by dominating stuff around the world. So, yeah, I'm not sure playing Red Bull or not has much of an impact in terms of the white ball teams. I think if you're going around being the top run scorer every comp you're at, then I'd like to think it doesn't matter whether you play Red Bull stuff or not, in terms of getting picked for the T20 side.
Yeah. How about 50 over cricket? You talk about T20 there. Where do your aspirations, or do you have any aspirations and plans for 50 over cricket, or is it just mostly about T20? And then, as you say, just looking at a bit more red ball cricket, perhaps.
I obviously haven't played much 50 over cricket, but when I have, I've loved it. I think it seems like the nicest format to bat in, especially as an opener. You get a 10 over power play, and then if you're still batting after that, the ball stops moving. And yeah, it's obviously a shame with the schedule that we don't get to play more. But yeah, I mean, that's something I'd love to play if the schedule allowed, I guess.
Yeah. Do you stay in touch a lot with Tom Banton, obviously teammate, and yeah, I guess do you chat about career directions and the decisions that you both end up making?
We chat. We're really good mates, but I wouldn't say we chat too much about that side of things. Obviously, he's had an amazing year last year and seems to have figured out his game a bit more, and whether that's to do with red ball cricket or not, I'm not too sure. But yeah, he'd definitely be one I'd talk to if I think I was unsure on things. To
find out what has helped him, do you think? Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that's a big topic in England at the moment has been sparked by James Vince's decision to step down, stalwart of Hampshire, 10 years captain, or however many it is, and take a white ball only contract because of England's decisions with the NOCs. I was interested to see sort of how you saw that, and because at the time it seemed like maybe you were going to set a trend. Haven't been a lot of young players, very young players like yourself taking that decision. But do you think that the current situation in England might actually lead to more players taking white ball only contracts?
It's hard to comment on other people's sort of decisions. I think I was in a very different position to, I guess, all my peers from an age group perspective, because I was obviously doing quite well in the white ball stuff, but then in red ball cricket I was probably averaging 10 in the second team, whereas everyone else was probably more likely to be playing first class cricket as opposed to sort of the franchise stuff. So I think I felt in a very unique scenario in that sense, and I think that's probably, I was never expecting there to be a big flood of youngsters to do it, because I'm sure if I was playing first class cricket as well and doing well, I would have been enjoying it and then wanting to carry on doing that. Vincey was obviously a very unique situation, and there were a lot of factors that went into that. So I think it's hard to sort of put a blanket over everyone in England. I'm sure there are conversations going on about what decisions people want to make and what stage they're at in their careers, but I'm not too sure on what everyone's stance is on it at the moment.
Has there been much curiosity about other young cricketers in England about the road you've taken? Has anyone asked you what it's been like, or is that something that hasn't really come up at all?
It hasn't really come up, to be honest. It's sort of, like I said, I felt like I was in a unique position. I don't think there was anyone else that was two extremes like I was. Obviously, everyone asks how it's going and stuff, and I have loved the last 2 years, and I think it's I don't regret the decision at all, and I think it's been great for me for a enjoyment point of view, and equally my degree. It's freed up a lot of time for me to do my uni work, which I think had I been, I guess, constantly playing, it would have been a lot tougher, and then there's all the added stresses and things that come with that. So, and I'm nearing the end of that now, so it might all be coming together at a nice time.
Oh, that's it. Economics and maths, was it? So big brain that you have.
Not a big brain, just wired towards numbers, I think.
I guess I was thinking about a lot of stuff that you hear from sort of young cricketers coming through and other cricketers as well, who say, Test cricket is the pinnacle, and that's what they've always dreamed of since they were a kid. Is it something that you dreamed of as a kid? Is it still the pinnacle, or I guess a lot of people sometimes feel they have to say that. How do you feel about Test cricket, and how did you feel about it when you were a kid?
To be honest, I didn't watch a lot of cricket when I was younger. It's hard to say that playing Test cricket's always been a dream of mine, because I don't know if it would be fair to say that, but I don't think equally I've had many dreams around sports. I've sort of always just played and done my work, done my school, done my sport, and I've just ended up down this cricket path. Obviously watching it now, it's cool. It looks like good fun to play in. It looks like a great environment to be a part of. And in terms of being the pinnacle, I'd say if you can master Test cricket, then you're probably the best in the world. Whereas T20 stuff, I think it's a completely different game. So I'd say from just the relentlessness of the skill set and all those things you need to do well in Test cricket, it probably is the pinnacle from that point of view. But in terms of my goals and aspirations, I wouldn't say they're massively in one direction, or if I play Test cricket, I'll be yeah, I've made it. Do you know what I mean?
I find it interesting that you say that it's cool. Is that like a so-called Bazball effect?
Or I'm not sure about cool. It looks fun is what I meant. It looks like it's a cool environment to be a part of. It looks fun, chilled, but then equally competitive, and they're all very good and doing well. So I think that's more what I was getting at.
No, I can see what you mean. I just wondered if it actually looks like more fun, probably in the last couple of years than sort of back when you were sort of going around the second 11s the last time around.
Yeah, I think it's that approach would resonate well with me in terms of it's not all about your technique and batting for all day. It's how do you score runs? And I think that probably suits me more than trying to just grind it out and score 100 off 300 balls. Because, I don't think that would ever be my strong suit.
Who do you look up to as far as batting goes?
I don't think there's anyone in particular, to be honest. A lot of the time I'll watch people and try and pick up on things that they do, whether that's Bance or Jaxie here or Livy at the 100. Obviously you can take little things from everyone, but I think to try and model your game around one person can be pretty difficult, especially if they bat in a very different way to you.
And what is it that you see your role as? Obviously it's being an aggressor, but how has your batting, do you think, developed in these 2 years since you started going around and being exposed to all these different cricketers?
I'd like to think technically it's got a bit more sound, which might explain why I did better in the Red Bull stuff last year than I did previously. Working on new shots the whole time. A lot of it, I think, is sort of game management and just seeing how people read the game, and that's been something I've sort of looking back on last year. I had a few quick starts, but then didn't really play a match-winning knock. I sort of just got in and got out. And whereas if you look at someone like Vincey, if he gets in, he kills the game, and that's what you want to get to. You want to be the one winning games for your team as opposed to just making nice contributions. Obviously,
the last couple of years for someone like yourself must have been a great adventure, if nothing else. Are there any moments that you can share or things that you experienced along the 2 years where you thought, I've made the right decision here because this is an awesome experience?
The CPL would be a big highlight for me. Obviously that's during the English summer, so wouldn't have been able to go otherwise. That was amazing. I think the Caribbean is probably my favourite place in the world, so to be able to play cricket there was equally cool. I've been able to spend a lot of time with my friends, which has been nice. That's a big part, I think, of my life away from cricket is my mates from school. So obviously having a bit more free time, it's been nice to be able to spend more time with them. And then, like I said, my degree, I think there's been times where I would have felt pretty overwhelmed with the amount of work I had to do as well as cricket, but that's nearly done now. So then that's one less thing to worry about, I guess.
Is that something that you think maybe most people don't realise, is that the things that you sacrifice in your personal life if you are going to take it seriously, and how much that can then weigh on a player's decision to concentrate on one thing or the other?
Yeah, it can become pretty all consuming, but I think that's where if you're in the right headspace, where like everything you do is geared towards, I guess, being the best cricketer you can be. It can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. Like if you're loving playing, then you're loving your time. But if you're not enjoying playing and you're playing the whole time, then that's where it gets difficult, I think. So that's where a big thing for me now, if I do start playing red ball again, it's how do I find a way to enjoy it when it's a game in April and I've got the whole season ahead, as opposed to a couple of second team games at the back end of a summer when I know I've got a month off coming up anyway. So yeah, they're the types of conversations going on at the moment. But
do you mind me asking what you're going to do with your degree? Have you got any plans for what you're going to do with that?
Well, hopefully cricket goes well and I never need to use it. But it's a backup. If I get a bad injury or my form falls off a cliff or I just don't enjoy it anymore, I think hopefully it will help me get into a new career. But yeah, like I said, I'm looking at it as a backup and hopefully I never need it. But yeah, it takes the pressure off, I guess. It means I can just go out there and enjoy it. And that's when I think, yeah, I'll have the most fun and equally probably do the best I can.
And how do you feel about Somerset as a team and as a county, bearing in mind, it's very much watch this space, I guess, to see what you do next there.
Yeah, I mean, they've equally got to want me to play. They might not want me to play red ball cricket. So, yeah, I mean, I love it there. I think the environment's awesome. It's obviously very competitive, very, I guess, geared towards like high performance. I'd say we massively punch above our weight. And like I said, I mean, everyone wants to be a part of those teams now because we're winning a lot. And that's when sport's best, is when you're winning with your mates. And that's, I think, why the environment's so good at Somerset at the moment. And obviously I was there for a couple of months pre-Christmas and everyone trains like really hard, but then equally enjoys their time together away from cricket. So I think it seems like a nice balance of everything there at the moment. And yeah, hopefully there's a championship and a few more Blast trophies to add to, I guess, their trophy cabinet.
Well, we will definitely be watching to see what part you may or may not play in all of that. But all the best with it, and I really look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you.
That is it for today's show. Cheers, Phil. Cheers, listeners. We'll be back with our next daily episode on the Women's Ashes. That'll be hitting your feeds on Saturday afternoon.